morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. Live from the All America city of Morrisville in the Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States of America. I welcome you from all around the world in the United States for this wonderful show, sometimes turbulent discussions about the divisive issues of our times. We talk about global affairs, the future of innovation, technology, an economy that's looking very, very dismal right now globally. Rishi Sunak taking over as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Great Britain. What is going to happen with him as he leads Britain in a terrible, terrible economy? And today, we will also talk about the elections coming up in less than 2 weeks. November 8th, all seats for the United States Congress up, and the control of the House and Senate much in the hands of these midterm elections. But before we begin today, I want to open up my monologue on the game-changing event yesterday with Twitter. Elon Musk, the Tesla CEO and founder, fired several of the social media company's top executives after his $44 billion with the B takeover closed after months of turmoil. What happens now? Well, Trump says that he wants to Musk says he wants to get rid of more staff, loosen rules on misinformation and hate speech, and reinstate some of the banned accounts, including former President Donald Trump. Now, this is going to be very interesting as we get through the midterm elections. Will this mean that it'll make it easier for Donald Trump to come in, take over the Twitter? What does Musk mean by controlling free speech? Is he going to make it easier for Twitter to be used to monitor hate speech? Or will he be a referee to determine what is hate speech or not? And the other question we have to ask ourselves is, how bad does Musk really want this? Is he really going to take the time to invest the infrastructure, retain the employees to manage a very complicated and sophisticated platform? Well, given his successful business career and his focus on innovation, and I don't think he did this just for having fun. I think there is some politics involved in this. We will see. But the bottom line is this. Twitter has changed the way we engage with each other politically, the way we converse with each other, the way we talk about each other. And I don't know whether it would help at all by making it easier to take hate speech onto Twitter. But it's out of our hands. We'll see what Musk does. But we will be talking about that today. A couple of other issues, basically, we're going to talk about today. And the U.S. economy is sending mixed signals. The good news is we're not in a recession yet. We're not. The nation's GDP, the broadest measure of economic activity, showed some growth from July through September. However, there are signs of a slowdown that is coming. The GDP boost probably a one-time bump, and mortgage rates also hit 7% yesterday for the first time in 2 decades. And finally, Russia is going after the government of one of Ukraine's neighbors, Moldova. Russian security service has spent millions to build a network of politicians to reorient Moldova's pro-Western government towards Moscow. Russia is still trying to manipulate countries in Eastern Europe, even as its military campaign in Ukraine falters and Moscow becomes increasingly isolated. Will other Eastern European nations be now in danger of attack or a pro-Moscow foreign policy being pushed by Vladimir Putin? We will be talking about other issues as well, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's begin the plane ride. I want to bring in my co-pilot, the Wizard of Oz, Mark Lee, the guy behind the curtain that makes us all look good.
How's it going? Glad to be here. We've got other guests that we've got to bring in as well, and everything in that space. I do have to tease you about a couple of things. One is that I'm sure that was just a powerful business move, and I'm sure that can't wait to hear what Shaquille's got to say about this whole Twitter buy and everything. But you do know that there were 2 other billionaires that apparently lost their version of their shirt on yesterday, because that was the other news that my friends and people were talking about. And part of that is because maybe they stepped too far into the political game. Maybe people are mad at them. Who knows? But definitely we know that Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Facebook, now known as Meta, lost a whole lot of money on it yesterday. I think it was in the billions. And then Kanye West also lost a lot of money as well because of some of the statements that he made, and he lost the deal with Adidas. So that was some of the things that I was seeing also in the news revolving social media and things in that space. But definitely that's been conversations that are going on among my friends.
Now, Kanye West, I don't know what he was thinking by making the comment that he made about the Jewish community. That was a poor comment.
He wasn't thinking.
Sorry?
He wasn't thinking.
No, exactly. Probably he's still, a bit emotional and going through this separation with him and Kim Kardashian and the stuff with their kids very publicly. But that was a very, very poor move and poorly executed move. As for Mark Zuckerberg, his net worth is falling because the whole tech sector is falling after an enormous run up during COVID. But let me get to
the tech sector is falling, but the argument that I've heard, and this is from some friends of mine that are in that space, is that part of the reason that it is falling is because of the naming, because he changed Facebook to Meta as if he was the inventor of the metaverse. And a lot of my friends that are in the metaverse are like, wait a minute, there's been a metaverse for a long time. So it's like he changed the name, and part of that was his attempt to try to use this platform or this popularity thing of augmented reality and virtual reality as a move. And some of the people in that space are like, maybe that's why it's falling, because it was kind of a business move that might have backfired on him.
Yeah, Mark, but that's history, though. That was a while ago.
Those people might want to study finance, because if they think that because some tech nerds don't like it, that therefore has meant that everything in tech has fallen, but had it not been for Mark Zuckerberg doing this renaming, the Facebook Meta stock wouldn't have fallen. Is that the how ridiculous? So obviously they don't know anything about finance. They don't know what makes institutional investors think. But let's get to Steve. So Steve, you said it's going to make it easier to bring hate speech to Twitter. Hate speech. I mean, this sounds terrible, but let's define what hate speech is. We've got laws in the UK that says, if you don't use somebody's pronouns, it's hate speech. If you disagree that gender doesn't really exist and you can change it at will, then that's hate speech. If you, express an opinion, generally speaking, that the most extreme progressives have, if you express an opinion that negates their opinion, that's hate speech. So when you say it's going to bring it easier, it's going to make it easier for people to bring hate speech onto Twitter, what sort of hate speech are you worried about?
Well, I think in general, my concern isn't so much, targeting only the Republicans. Having been through an election where social media was very negative and observing it going on today, I think that these companies have no accountability in terms of the facts behind what they say.
They're not saying it. They're not saying anything. People are saying it. You and I.
You are saying it. Let's put.
They should they should control it.
No, they should. Why?
Whoa. No, when you say control, you can't say control, Steve. You can't.
Steve, would you like a moderator here?
Hold on a second.
I'll give you a crystal chance to say. Steve, you're talking about a platform that thought it was okay to ban Donald Trump, the sitting president of the United States at that time, whilst allowing Iranian mullahs to jump on there, allowing ISIS members to jump on there and talk about death to the West and those sorts of things. So that's okay, but Donald Trump is not. And you wonder why Elon Musk might say, this is alienating to half of the people in the country, presumably close to half the people in the Western world. Maybe if I buy it and allow them to have a platform that they might come back onto the platform, and that will boost activity and boost the share price.
That's money. It's revenue.
Is that you've said that Twitter has changed the way that we all communicate. I've never even had a Twitter account, right? I have no intention of ever having one. So I only hear about Twitter comments when people tell me about them. I'm not interested. Lee and Chris, over to you.
Go ahead, Lee.
Should we have a moderator here so we know who can say what? I mean, if you can't disagree with people, you can't have a conversation. How would that work? You don't like my speech because I insulted your tie or because I said it's raining when it's not raining?
I like Steve's ties.
The
Shut
Yankees
up.
are going to win, or the Yankees going to lose, or the earth is flat. Like, who cares? You don't like what I'm saying? Don't listen to me or disagree with me. Tell me I'm wrong. And who's to define hate speech? I don't like hamburgers, let's say. Is that hate speech?
Yeah, I think it's hard to monitor this stuff. I'm just saying it's just.
Hold on a second.
Let's need a monitor.
No, but hold on a second. But that becomes.
Steve, it's not hard to monitor when you've got people. You've got so everyone knows that I own greyhounds.
Mark, where's the mute button?
You've got animal rights activists that have made death threats to people in the greyhound industry and the horse racing industry. You have animal activists that have jumped on YouTube and Twitter, etc., saying that any person that eats meat should be slaughtered, have their children slaughtered in front of them, just like as what happens to animals. That's not hate speech. That's okay. But saying, oh, look, I really have a problem with, transgender issues being taught to kindergarten kids. Oh, hate speech is going to be taken off. You're an online bully. I mean, come on. And then the worst thing is that then they'll do something even worse. They'll do something really out there, like taking a 5 or 6 year old kid to a drag show, and they'll say, "But we were just trying to start a conversation." No, you weren't. You weren't trying to start a conversation because what you want is people to either agree with you or to shut up. And you want to deplatform them, deperson them, and silence them. That's the issue. That's been the complaint for a long time. And for anybody like Mark or yourself to try to suggest that, but the Democrats, the left, the political left around the world, they've also been silenced. No, they haven't.
Yes, they have. But hold on a second. Shaquille, one of the things I'm going to say is that what could happen with Twitter, and I've seen it happen with an app that I used to be active on. I'm not that active now, even though I did pop on it yesterday and everything, happens with Clubhouse. And Clubhouse does have a series of moderators. And I'm wondering if Twitter is going to try to go down that route. But what happens with those series of moderators is that for whatever reasons, whether you're on the left or the right, the moderators will randomly just toss people down to the lobby, because that's kind of the area that they have, or whatever the name they want to give it. Or
there's a big difference. There's a big difference. You can't compare the two.
Matter of who is going to conduct the moderation and how is the moderation going to be impacted. And that's on both sides. I've seen that happen in debates around the vaccine. I've seen that happen around debates around Black Lives Matter. I've seen that happen around debates around
where's
in the church. So I'm trying to show you that there's around different issues that have both a left and a right perspective.
Where's the platform for people that say, I am not so sensitive that I need someone to protect me from somebody else's bad thoughts and bad words? Okay? Where's that platform? There are people like me that say, you know what? I want to go listen to somebody whose ideas I don't agree with. I generally listen to people whose ideas I totally don't agree with, because I want to know what's going on with them. What are they thinking? Why are they thinking it? Because a lot of the time I don't get it, so I listen to them. Now, David Icke, for example, he's come up with some weird and wonderful conspiracy theories over the years, including saying that all the politicians and the royal families of the world are part of this sort of reptilian thing and they can shapeshift and all that sort of stuff. That's some pretty far out there stuff. But I'll tell you what, if he was doing, a big, he normally books out these stadiums and gives these talks and stuff, I'd go, not because I believe him, but because it's entertaining. He's an entertaining character. Okay.
Well, I
don't need somebody else to jump in and say, well, that's misinformation, Shaquille. It's really important that we protect you. You can't possibly be exposed to that. What am I, a 5-year-old? No, because if I was a 5-year-old, I'd be taught even more misinformation, like gender has never existed.
But Shaquille, that's my point, is I like to hear different viewpoints as well. Chris has made that compliment to me about some of the people I've interviewed and everything. So definitely that is something that I enjoy hearing, is different views. I may not agree.
Mark?
I may agree and everything, but I have seen where it has happened in these different spaces. It's not just Clubhouse. I've seen it in Facebook. I've seen it in a number of other places. And, there are folks that set up these arbitrary rules, and I don't know that the rules necessarily are effective. That's my point.
Well, let me say about. Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. Go ahead.
Just real quickly, would you feel comfortable if you got a notice or an email from StreamYard telling who you can and cannot have as a guest on your show?
I've got notices from YouTube, and I don't feel comfortable about that. I wouldn't feel comfortable about that
I get emails
the guest
all the time.
thing either. And I've had some guests that I know that I disagree with. So one of the most popular shows you can
disagreeing is good. But being told you can't have them on your show
that we had was a a conspiracy theorist, and he was one of the most popular shows. That is still one of our top rated ones, because that's when I had Ole Damagart. And if you listen to Ole and you can see him on YouTube, he's the one that is like those type of people that you're talking about. He thinks that, the world is controlled by this crazy monolith kind of organization. But
so let him. In libraries, we have a whole section for fictional books. What's wrong with that?
Like I said, I enjoyed the interview. There were things that I disagreed with, but I didn't like challenging either.
Just to make sure that we're clear, it's okay to make fun of so-called conspiracy theorists, but it's not okay for them to say, all right, you want to make fun of me? Well, this is actually what I think, and this is actually how I feel about the issues. Their speech we're not allowed to hear, but we can make fun of them. Is that right? Let me just remind you that the whole thing with Twitter. Let me just remind you of how things happened. A number of people had been kicked off Twitter. Donald Trump hadn't been at that point because he was the president of the United States. Then they kicked him off because without any evidence, without him being convicted in a court of law or any other due process being applied, they decided that he incited the January 6th riot. So they took him off the platform. Okay? So then mostly right-wing people said, you know what? We're sick of this. We're going to start our own platform. And we're not happy with big tech, so we're going to move away from Facebook. We're going to move away from all the traditional things, and we're going to use Parler. We're going to use, all these other types of things. So what did Google and Apple do? They said, well, you can't have Parler in the App Store anymore. We're going to get rid of it because you're not protecting users against online bullying. And so on and so forth it went. So when they were told, hey, you don't like our platform, go start your own, that got blocked. As far as I'm concerned, there are laws in the United States to prevent that from happening, anti-collusion laws and that sort of stuff, anti-competition laws. And the big tech companies, in my opinion, brutally abuse those powers in order to pursue their own political ends. And it's not acceptable in a free country where the exchange of ideas is tantamount and fundamentally a part of our freedom. Chris.
The bottom line on this whole thing when we talk about this is the spreading of false information. Now, Steve, not to pick on you, but it was 2 days ago you talked about Rishi Sunak, and he was the first Indian to be the UK Prime Minister. That is patently false. He's not Indian. He's not. If he was Indian, he wouldn't be the British Prime Minister. Now, that is false information. But you didn't mean it that way. I know exactly how you meant it. You meant it that he was a British, he was a UK citizen of Indian descent, the first one to be prime minister.
Well,
I get it.
He is the first Hindu to be elected prime minister of Great Britain. That's true, and
but
he is the son of Indians, a descendant.
Right, exactly. Then later on, when you talked about Marco Rubio, you said the son of immigrants. You didn't say he was Cuban. You didn't say he was Cuban. You said he was son of immigrants. That's the difference between those two things. Now, I didn't call you out on that. I called you out now. But the bottom line is that it's not, I don't think it's false. I think it's just intent. I think the idea is that I know what you said. I know exactly what you said. And I thought, okay, you're proud of it.
Start with this. We're going to come back to this issue, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens now with this motivating Trump to get back. Well, we think he's going to run again, but now he really may want to run again. But let's get Sasha started.
Wait a second. You think that him being able to jump back on Twitter is going to be a motivating force?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's going to make a difference as to whether he's going to run or not.
Absolutely.
But what do you think that there's a bunch of Republicans out there going, well, I can't. I mean, come on. His popularity hasn't
he can
gone
lie
down.
again. He can lie and he can make up things.
So you tell me what he's lied about. You tell me.
Wait, who decides what to lie?
You tell me what he's lied about or misrepresented. Excellent. See, and that's exactly what you're going to hear from a Democrat all the time. What did Donald Trump lie about? He lied about everything.
I'm not saying that as a Democrat. He just was not a good president.
Okay, that's your opinion. No, that's fine.
Ask Sasha about that. Was he a good president? Wait. I got to get it. Hold on, Shaquille. I got to.
Hold on.
He wasn't reelected. He was a loser.
Steve, that's your opinion, and that's absolutely fine.
Hey, there are some people. That's the truth. He wasn't reelected. He was an incumbent president
that have an opinion.
Did he get more votes than any other incumbent president?
He didn't. He got killed. He got
more votes than any incumbent president.
There
Yeah,
are some
but-
people
Donald
out there that
Trump
have the
is the
opinion that Biden
ultimate
is not a
loser.
very
He's
good
not
president.
just a
Yeah,
loser.
at least there
He's
was also
a,
opinion
he's
that
a
he got more
mother of
votes.
all losers
man.
of all times. He lost presidency.
Right.
He lost Senate. He lost the House. He lost all his businesses whenever he did. He lost everything. He lost all his father's fortune. He existed on Russian mafia's money, and Russians elected him in 2000.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that, Sasha, because
He's a
Sorry,
quasi
can I
criminal
finish?
on many counts,
Okay.
and
Can I
that man belongs to jail. Whether
Can
he
I
will go to
finish?
jail, it's irrelevant. But he will
Pastor?
spend all his money, whatever he has left, on lawyers. He's paying retainers, $3 million to lawyer even to represent him, because he swindled lawyers all his life. He never paid their bills. It's all well-known fact. He's screwing people left and right all his life. And you're talking about the president. Only in America such a bastard could be a president. That's it.
Okay,
What's
so
your opinion of Hillary?
if I can now finish my sentence.
Yeah, finish your sentence, you
But
do.
it is perfectly reasonable for you to not feel very positive about Donald Trump and to say, in your opinion, he's the worst president, or in Sasha's opinion, he's a criminal, or whatever. That's all fine. But why is it that people that want to say either complimentary things about him or negative things about Biden, they're not allowed to do so? You guys can make jokes about this, but let's be very serious here. If it's okay for you guys to make allegations or make comments about one president on one side of politics being the worst in history, why is it not okay for other people to say other things about other presidential nominees or other presidents? Well, they can, but they weren't
I
able
mean,
to.
I am sure. Hold on a second.
They weren't
I am
able
sure
to.
that. Hold on a second,
No,
Shaquille.
Mark, you hold on.
No, I'm
They
watching
weren't
the
able
report
to.
of a
They
Democrat.
weren't
And I'm
able
sure it's going to get a
to.
lot
Mark,
of abuse.
I waited while you all interrupted. They weren't able to, and that is exactly why we got into this position in the first place.
No, but I'm saying that there's a case that's about
my
to
question
happen
was
very
to
soon.
Steve, Mark.
But I
No,
think
Mark,
there's going
no,
to be a
Mark,
lot of
Mark,
conversations
Mark, my
around
question was to
them
Steve.
and their politics, and there have been conversations around their politics.
doing the
Because
Potomac shuffle.
apparently
My
the
question
House
is still to
Speaker's
Steve.
husband, and this is earlier
Mark,
today,
my question was
was
still to
violently
Steve.
assaulted. So that's what. So I imagine
Mark,
people are going to be
my
like
question-
making
my
some
question
comments
was still
around
to
that.
Steve.
As
So-
to
I'm
not
what is
listening
going
to you,
on,
Mark. My
why they
question
didn't go
was
after
to
Nancy, and a number of other things, because apparently that happened like about an hour ago.
So let's.
Who was Nancy when it happened?
No. I asked Steve a question, and you guys wanted to make a joke out of it. That's fine. Steve, answer my question. If you want to have a go at Elon Musk and you want to have a go at people because they've been told, if you don't like it, either buy the company yourself or go start your own. Why is it okay for one side to say things like Sasha has said about Donald Trump, but it's not okay for the other side to say things about Hunter Biden, for example? Why
I'm
is it
not
okay
saying
for
that.
one side, not the other?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should.
Twitter
Here's what-
deleted New York Post's verified story on Hunter Biden's laptop coming up to the election. So don't tell me it didn't happen. Why is it okay for one side to do it, not the other? That's my question.
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I mean, I think there needs to be rules across the board that are fair. I'm just saying that
Yeah,
the
there are
factual,
rules, which is that you've got free speech. That's the rule.
the factual. But let's go to Moldova real quick, Sasha. And we're going to
No,
come
no,
back.
I want you to stay on this. I want you to give me a proper answer.
We got
It's
to
a
talk
news show
about
that doesn't
Moldova.
just
We'll
say
come
one
back to
issue
this.
to kill. So let him switch to something else.
Yeah. We'll come back. We'll come back to this issue. But and like I said, if you're a Republican listening to this show and you don't like Joe Biden, attack him by all sense of the imagination. And we'll see if he does run again and he gets smashed in a landslide against Trump or DeSantis, then
Attack him,
it.
Steve. Attack him. People started chanting "Let's go, Brandon." They were told that by chanting that they were racist. I mean, what are you talking about? Any criticism of Joe Biden, any sort of criticism of his mental acuity or his ability to run the country, his inflationary pressures that he's caused, any sort of criticism is met with this sheer hostility, which you don't see from the other side. Look, I'm not American. It's not my country, right? But I can tell you it happens all over the world. You're not unique in that. Okay. And as for Sasha's comments, Sasha, really? Donald Trump is only in the United States could somebody like Donald Trump become the leader? Are you serious? Have you looked around the world?
Well, no, there is another country, Russia, where there is a thug, a professional thug, an idiot like Putin can be a president for 22 years. So in that
Brazil,
respect, U.S. is far behind Russia.
Right, and I would like to say something about Trump and the idea that he was sucked into the president. Oh, he stunk. Whatever else. Let me tell you something about Trump. Not one penny went to Iran. Not one. He cut that sucker off so quick it'd make your head spin. Let me tell you something, Sasha. What's Iran doing right now that they got brought back in and they were paid all the money, 150 billion or whatever it is, and plus cash and whatever else? They're making these nice drones and they're launching them against, let's see who? Ukraine. So they're supporting Russia. Russia's now supporting Iran, according to intelligence information, on their nuclear program. So what has Biden done? Let's see. Biden opened up Iran so that they could go ahead and they could keep supporting terrorist activity plus drones that they're hitting Ukraine. They're smashing your electrical system. You got rolling blackouts. Your people, let me tell you something. Your people, not your people, but Ukraine, they're going to start freezing. They're going to take Kherson, and they're sitting there saying, yeah, we're going to take Kherson. Let me tell you something. The Russians now are going to just wait. They're going to wait until they're slogged down in the mud, which they are right now. They're slowing down because the offense is slowing down because of mud. They have to wait until they freezes so that they can get across with their armor so they can start taking Kherson. And let me tell you, by the time they get there, Kherson's going to be, well, let me take your point, Sasha, about the people right now that are in the Russian army, and that is that they're 18-year-olds, they're drunks, they're probably taken from whatever. They're going to be holding Kherson against Ukraine, and Ukraine, I think, is going to take Kherson, but it's going to take a lot of casualties. So all this aspect, Iran would have never provided jack crap to Russia had Trump's policy of we are not giving one more cent to Iran and we're going to sanction the crap out of them so they can't do any more nuclear stuff. But France and the rest of those assholes, they decided to say, oh, no, we have to we have to make sure they're back in so that they don't develop this nuclear warfare, which they're developing with Russia. So Trump stopped it. Biden's a jackass. The guy is just, here you go, here's money. Oh, and by the way, my wife says I should run for president because it's something I really care for. Yeah, that's great, Jill. Thanks.
Chris, I'll tell you one thing that Elon Musk is saying exactly the same thing what France said. Oh, we have to do some peace. Maybe we should give Crimea to Russia and then settle other stuff or so on. You know what? He's now busy with Twitter. Let him do that. This idiot, he called Kasparov a stupid man and insulted him. And all chess world is now against Elon Musk if he cares about that. But that's a fact. And
Sasha, real quickly, go ahead. What? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to finish. Now, it's been. It's not really Iran-Russia relationship. America has very little to do with that because both countries are anti-American 100%, and they decided to support each other and help each other any way they can, and they do. And the only thing what America can do is to supply enough weapons to Ukraine to finish this war as soon as possible. Now, by the way, Russia, it's been estimated now by different think tanks and other institutions, Russia has exactly 1 more year to have financial, human, weapons, abilities to continue this war in any shape or form. It's 1 year. It's not 1 year and a half or more. It's exactly 1 year. So if now, even if there will be a break in a battlefield during the winter months, so it will be 9 more months to deal with Russia. Russia will eventually collapse for several different problems. But right now, they still have an ability to mobilize more men. They're now talking about mobilizing 1.5 million new conscripts. It doesn't matter that half of them will die probably in the next few days, but they get Ukrainians busy, they can maneuver, and they can do help to fill up the gaps in their lines. So that's unfortunately what we are dealing with. And the only thing what can decide the war, and very quickly do so, is a supply of weapons to Ukraine. By the way, all of you are aware that there is a first #1 unit in of American Army SEALs. They're now moved to Romania in complete combat readiness to move in Ukraine. And they said it in interview very openly without hiding anything. Actually, the interviews are becoming, and telephone calls or so on, they're becoming very straight, up to the point. There is no more niceties being done. So we are now in a very, very interesting stage. And we'll see how it will develop.
Yeah, the QRF. You're right, Sasha. They have QRFs in Romania. They also have QRFs in Poland with 101st. So this is. I wanted to show this because I think Sasha will get a big kick out of this. This is from the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. 69,700 Army personnel have been killed in Russia. Now I want to show you what the Ministry of Defense in Russia shows. Wow. 1,351. Hey, Sasha, it looks like they got plenty of people. You know what I mean? But let's take a look one more time. Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, 69,700. Ministry of Defense of Russia, 1,351. I just want to make sure that was very clear in people's minds.
No, I mean, we know that there's misinformation even in other parts of the world as well. But Chris, I have to ask you something because we talked about it and you said you're going to bring it up, and I'm going to have you bring it up now because isn't there another part of the world that's having a major casualty that's going on and nobody's reporting on it, and it's got even more than the Ukraine? And of course, it might be that it's in a African nation that is the reason that it's not getting covered and all along those lines. But share a little bit about that, please.
Well, Ethiopia, Tigray is in the northeastern part of Ethiopia, and I showed that in the map the other day. But basically, what happens is that Eritrea was part of Ethiopia. It had the entire coastline. Eritrea busted away from Ethiopia in the 1970s. In fact, when I just started in intelligence, we were reporting on that. It was a big deal because a lot of people were dying at that point in time. And Eritrea broke away, and then now the Tigray region wants to break away also, and they have kind of broken away. They're kind of the separate province. And it's interesting, Sasha. Basically, what happened is that they were kind of a separate province of Ethiopia. And in 2019, the Ethiopian leader was given the Nobel Peace Prize, which was, like I said, you might as well get those at Walmart now between Obama and this guy. And then they end up. Oh, by the way, Putin was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Just want to let you know that, Sasha. So yeah, I mean that's very, very important. So I mean, Zelensky was never nominated, but Putin was. So
Chris, you know what it reminds me? Remember this? I love that movie, Dr. Strangelove.
Oh yeah.
When they're attacking this air base and there is a shooting all over the place, and there is a huge transparent saying, "Peace is our profession."
That was Strategic Air Command's. That is exactly what Strategic Air Command's motto was. Peace is our profession. I love it. With a big gigantic metal arm. It was just. But anyways, I know that it is almost comedic. But if people weren't dying, so Ethiopia is trying to take over the Tigray region, and they put the armed troops in there in 2020. And so far, between starvation and battle and everything else, we're talking about between 500,000 and 600,000 casualties that have happened in less than 2 years. Interestingly enough, right now in Ukraine, they're talking about somewhere around 43,000 casualties in civilian. And I'm going to tell you they're undercounted. Those are undercounted. There's many more than 43,000. And the reason I say that is because when they finally went into Afghanistan, there's Iraq. When they went into Iraq after the war, they found that they said there was only like 40,000 or whatever it was casualties. It turned out to be 400,000. So I have a feeling that when the Ukraine war when they go in and finally do the counting, because a lot of people are being buried and this is a hell of a thing for me to say, man. A lot of people are being buried just like right there. They're just, doing mass graves, or they're just burying people, whatever else. So they have no idea how many people are in those graves. Even though there may be one marker, there may be 10, 20 people in that grave. So there's a lot of miscounting that's being done right now with casualties. But just pointing out that in Ethiopia, we're talking 600,000, mainly because of starvation. And Sasha, I'm really, really concerned about this, because what's going to happen is Russia doesn't give a crap at this point. The U.S. is not going to go 1 inch into Russia while Biden is president, because he doesn't want that. He doesn't want boots on the ground bull crap that he talks about. So I'm scared what's going to happen is Russia's just going to take these pot shots like the freaking V2 and V1 rocket from Nazi Germany, and they're just going to take out this infrastructure. And it's going to take forever to get that infrastructure back up. In the meantime, Ukrainians are going to be freezing.
But what do we think about real quickly? I just want to, well, it's still on the same topic, but these, working with Moldova and their government to make it pro-Moscow. So is there a fear of, also while we're in the middle of this Ukraine, that Moscow is making efforts to just sort of convert these Eastern European countries, or do you think that's just smoke and mirrors, Sasha, in terms of are they in danger? Are these Eastern European countries in danger?
Yes, they are in danger as long as Putin is in power. That's for sure. The first line of defense, and probably the only real line of defense, is Ukraine. If Putin somehow, because of the lack of weapons supplied, or not the right weapons supplied, or not supplied at all, if Russia will be able to prevail in Ukraine, then all Eastern Europe, anywhere from Bulgaria to up to Estonia, it's all for grabs, because nobody will be able, if Ukraine couldn't withstand Russian attack, then no, all these countries put together, and whether they're members of NATO or not will be irrelevant, because NATO countries will not start fighting nuclear war because of the Estonia with population of 1.5 million people, or some other little countries here and there. And so the Ukraine is the only, and not only first line of defense, it's the only line of defense. And this is so important to, you see right now, the attitude in the US, I think, is not to allow Putin to win. I think they go as far as that. But they don't go to next step, to allow Ukraine to win. They're just not there, unfortunately. So this is why there's a fight, and it's very unclear at this time what's going to happen.
It's a scary time. So let's go to the economy, folks. What do you think is going to happen? It looked like it showed some signs of growth, but doesn't mean we're off the hook with the way gas prices are. As we look at the midterm elections, to what extent do you all believe that the economy is going to be the main issue here? I'm just going to go down the road. Do you just think that it's just going to be too late for the Democrats? That's what I'm hearing from the consultants in North Carolina, that it's just the inflation, the gas prices, that's just going to be the decider 1 or 2% for a lot of these close races for Republicans. So it's going to be the difference in the Beasley and Budd race, maybe Riley Nichols race, we don't know, but definitely in some of these toss-up Senate and House races in the General Assembly. Shaquille, I know you're probably going to agree with that, but do you think it's just too late for the Democrats to make a comeback? If you were an advisor, I know you're the conservative voice of the show, but what advice would you have if you were advising a Democrat running right now? How are they going to get their numbers up?
Just quickly, I'm not a conservative in any. Look at the shirt I'm wearing. I mean, I am not conservative.
I said voice, conservative.
Well,
voice.
I don't. I'm certainly not a voice for conservatives. I'm really not. But look, just on economic issues, I think the Democrats have got a difficult time off it. Even if it wasn't for midterms, around the corner. Let's say midterms were in 6 months from now. I still think that they'd have a really difficult time, because they've sort of backed themselves into a corner with the green energy push. I think the issue that they're going to have is that they really have to do something about it. And what they're suggesting that they're going to do, listening to most of the debates, most of the debates that I've listened to, what they tend to be saying is, look, we understand that living costs are high, so we're going to alleviate that pressure by giving you more money, which is just an increase in government spending. That Republicans are saying, look, it's because of this government spending, in part, that inflation is really high, and the other part of it is because the cost of energy is so high. Coming into your winter, with the Europeans being very, very concerned about how they're going to keep everybody warm, I think that's also going to be on the minds of people in the United States. So I think that's probably going to be the primary issue. The secondary issue, or some of the secondary issues that they talk about, such as abortion, look, they do make a reasonable point, in my opinion, that abortion is complicated, and even late-term abortions, Republicans tend to be, they tend to take some of the more extreme positions like part birth abortion and very late-term abortions. But there are sometimes medically necessary reasons for that to occur, and Republicans tend not to want to acknowledge that. So Democrats do have a very good point that surely in these types of scenarios, they can be difficult conversations that women need to have with their families and with their doctors, and government shouldn't really be involved. The problem is that even if the Democrats were to control the House and the Senate, what exactly would they do? They can't really federalize it in my view from a legal perspective, and I'm not a lawyer, but they can't really federalize it without a constitutional amendment. So, but on the same token, Lindsey Graham, I think, has really hurt the Republicans by the Republicans coming out and saying, you know what, the Supreme Court was right in the Dobbs decision to turn it back to the states because it's a state issue. And then Lindsey Graham tries to create a federal ban and make it a federal issue. So that really undermines Republicans' position on that. But I don't think that there is that many people out there that are saying, look, I am likely to have so many abortions during my lifetime that this is going to be a significant issue. It's certainly known that abortion is going to be legal, at least in some states, probably in all, in some degree in all, certainly in the main states. And so, I think for most people, they would be able to access them if they really wanted to. I don't think that's going to swing the vote enough. I'm not really sure what else the Democrats can really run on. And I think at the moment they're basically just attacking Republicans for not looking out for the middle class. The Republicans' comments that, look, we are after the middle class. We want to make sure that their wages are not experiencing downward pressure because of cheap labor that is coming across the border. We're wanting to curb government spending. We want to lower energy costs. I think that's a strong and compelling argument. I think that will probably help them. I still believe that not only will they take the House, but I think that they will just limp over the line in the Senate as well and take control of that. And the other thing, just with immigration, people talk about dreamers. People talk about, making sure that people that have grown up in the United States, are not going to be sent back and not going to have their families torn apart. But you've got almost 5 million 5 million immigrants that have come in. I think it's 4.6 million, something like that have come in since Biden has been the president. Now, what happens to those kids that are 4, 5, 6 years old now? In 10 years' time from now, they're also going to be in the same position as what the dreamers are. And I think that's a really big concern to a lot of people, because if it's almost 5 million now, by the time the next election comes up, you're talking about 10 million people in a country of 330. That's an enormous number. That's a significant number of people. And I think that's a real concern. That's 2 Philadelphias. That's 2 cities of Philadelphia's being brought into your country. That's a really significant issue, I think.
Yeah, and I think there was some data showing that's clearly. I was watching CNN last night, but then I'm watching other news shows as well, and it's just clear the demarcation of how divided the country is. So, if you look at the Republicans going in the election, I think the numbers were like 65 to 70% believe that we're letting too many immigrants into the country and that it's hurting the U.S. in terms of just its cultural identity itself. But then only 12% of Democrats believe that, right? If you look at, is the country headed in the wrong direction? I think the scary thing for the Democrats is the numbers seem to be high for independents saying that the country is not in the right direction, as well as Republicans. And then an increasing number of Democrats, actually, that number is about 30%. So I think that's what's really, I think, a bad sign for the Democrats. Is one of my colleagues, Satish Gurmel, I want to bring him on the show. He's an immigrant from India, and he made a good, very, very smart guy, brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant guy. He's from Mumbai, and he basically said, look, Steve, it's about, and he's a Democrat, but he said it's just about what the common person out there is looking at, right? I mean, and that's the thing I love about Satish. He's very simple. He goes, if I'm paying more for groceries, if I'm paying more for gas, if I'm paying more for housing, if I'm paying more for everything, that's the only thing that's going to matter at the end of the day. It's not all this other stuff of smoke and mirrors. So it's pretty damn simple.
But,
that's
Yeah,
it's-
that's right. But also the ability of people to find good high paying jobs. If the market crashes, you're going to have issues. And look, I think this will be the real issue that I think you're going to have, that Republicans will have if they do take both houses. What are they going to do differently? Now, probably what they're going to do is they'll be very, very obstructive to anything the president wants to do. Let's just assume for a moment that they win the 2024 election. What is their plan? What are they going to do? Because by the time they get there, you're then in a position where interest rates are high. There's high regulations. A lot of people would have permanently left the workforce. By that time as well, you've got young people whose education has been interrupted because of COVID. There's a lot of pressures that are going to be faced by the nation next 5 and 10 years. And I tend to think it's around the world as well. We're talking about America for the moment. I tend to think that there needs to be some commonality, and I think people need to be able to just agree on certain things. Like, people would like there to be lower cost of living, but does that mean that you're prepared to take imports from countries that perhaps have labour standards that are not acceptable? A country that employs child labour, for example. Are you prepared to buy from them when obviously it's not acceptable in your own country to employ children in factories? What do? Do you put tariffs on? How do you solve that issue? How do you solve the issue of all this money has come into the economy? How do you pull the money out without absolutely crushing the economy and crushing the consumer, which is normally what the Fed's playbook is? So I really do think there's going to be some headwinds. And I think that the real problem with this coming into this midterm and potentially going into 2024 is that the Republicans aren't really telling you what they're going to do better. They're just saying what the Democrats did was bad, so let's just go back to not doing it. Let's not intervene in the market. Let the free market work itself out, and that's a dangerous play.
Steve, isn't that been part of the problem in politics for a number of decades? And it's where I get frustrated, is that that a lot of people are making their decisions based on these kind of interest groups and other kind of things that give you a sheet that tells you how to vote. And I think that there's not enough independent thought in that sense, whether it's the Sierra Club or whether it's a political action committee or things along those lines. And it's a lot of, because I forgot who it was. Maybe Chris can remind me. There was one of the old presidential candidates. It might have been one of the Bushes. It said it's the economy, stupid. And definitely, I think that there's been not enough narrative around those kind of things that impact everybody's life on a regular basis and all in that space. Because when I watch the debates, I don't hear a lot of that stuff that Shaquille just mentioned. I don't hear people talking about gas prices. I don't hear people talking about the housing market. I don't hear people talking about things that are affecting us all on a regular daily basis here in the United States.
I'm going to take a point
cost of living pressures, Mark.
I'm going to take a point of personal privilege here and say that as a Democrat, a moderate Democrat, one that has won with progressives working against me in my last two elections, I want to say that I think, in my opinion, the Democrats have really had an opportunity, and they just failed. I mean, you talk about Bill Clinton. It's the economy, stupid. He was able to turn this thing around against an incumbent president and use the opportunity of the economy to say Democrats can invest, can get a growing middle class, can get more money in the pockets of people. And we have not really been hearing that. And I know I'm getting a lot of flack. I'm not going to tell the Democrats right now, 2 weeks before, that everything is wonderful and great. The problem is most of the Democrats have been talking about two things. Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is evil. Republicans are really, really mean. And the progressive side's been talking more about the social issues. And they haven't been able to talk about what Biden did with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It's pumped too much money in the economy, but there have been some successes that the president was able to achieve. And I just don't understand what.
Sorry, but like what? You talk about the infrastructure bill, right?
Yeah.
The infrastructure bill, let's again, it's about how language is used all the time. That's why when people say, Republicans, they oppose sensible gun reform. It's like, okay, well, what is the sensible gun reform? What's sensible about it? People disagree on what's sensible and what's not. Look, Chris is arguably more conservative, or as conservative as you think I am. We don't agree on gun laws. So, I mean, what do you mean sensible? What about with immigration? Oh, Republicans don't want comprehensive immigration reform. Really? They don't? They don't want, but what you mean by comprehensive immigration reform is you want to let everybody in and just increase the amount of people processing them. I mean, this is the sort of thing. So you know, when you make those sorts of comments, it's about how language is being used. And look at what Chuck Schumer has said on the tarmac. I was
going to bring that up. He said the Pennsylvania debate was not that bad a performance. He also said that he was concerned about Georgia, and he was very concerned about Georgia, and he was surprised that they were going to go for Herschel Walker, and that might be going to a runoff. He also brought up the state.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania for a second. So I personally think that if I was a resident of Pennsylvania, I would want there not to be an election. The early voting would not happen until after the first debate. But that's a matter for Pennsylvania. Now, have a look. Republicans can complain about the way that elections are held in different states and what rules they have. Right? I'm sure that if Republicans had it their way, they would not allow a voting to occur until the people in Arizona had heard from the two candidates, for example. Okay, Democrats might want to do something else. And this is the problem that you're going to have if what you're suggesting, which has been brought up in some of these debates, is that they would like to federalize the election rules, which really takes away the states' rights to determine how their elections are going to be held and what they're going to send to Washington. You can't do that. And so, again, those issues, they are fundamentally part of the democracy and part of the republic that you have. But I don't think it's going to win votes when both sides are just going to sit there and say, well, look, it's an attack of our democracy. Our democracy is in jeopardy. No, it's not. Your country's not going to cease to exist because the other side wins. Come on. You know, cut it out. Just knock that stuff off because it's not working.
I get what you're saying.
I just wanted to show up the share screen just real quick, Mark, and to confirm some of what Steve said and to bring in some data on this. First of all, the first one on the poll, which is New York Times, and New York Times poll basically says Ipsos poll, which is really actually pretty good. Do you think the United States is on the right track or headed in the wrong track? This is not split, Steve. 62% think we're going in the wrong direction. Only 24% think we're going in the right track. If you break that down to age, whatever it is, but you break that down to party ID, 42% think we're going in the right direction from Democrats. 37% think we're going in the wrong direction. Now, Republicans, I would expect this, 86%, 10%. But look how close, with a margin of error of 5%. Guess what? You're split on the Democrats, not on all United States citizens. Especially when we talk about this one. Look at the region in the Midwest, 61% community city. This is urban environment, saying 52% is saying that we're going in the wrong direction. This is urban. If it's urban, isn't that the big support for Biden? And it's 52% saying we're going in the wrong direction.
I just saw in that other column that you've got Biden supporters at 43% from the 2020 election.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm assuming that means that people that voted for Biden in the 2020 election. So what you based on those numbers, if 80 million people voted for Biden in 2020, then 8 by 4, which is 32. So 32 million people actually believe that America's
right. If the sampling, really well. if you believe the sampling,
it's usually a case of, and that's what's been happening in the elections lately, voting for the least of these and not voting for the best of these, which I get frustrated about because I think we need to find better candidates. Hey, Lee, are you available to run for president? Oh, that's right, you are running for president.
Yeah, I just want to say something.
So we need people like Lee.
Mark, yes, to you, but I just want to add something what Chris was just saying, and it's extremely relevant now. Lee Zeldin brought it out. In terms of the cities, crime in big cities is a major force now of how people are going to be voting and how they feel about the present government, whether you believe it's the president's fault, the governors, the mayors, what have you. It's an issue for people in big cities. Crime is out of control.
In big cities, but there's a state that actually surprised me that it's turning, and that's one that Schumer mentioned because I did not realize that, and we've not been talking about it a lot, but apparently Nevada is going toward the Democratic side this time around because that's one of the things that he was putting up as a shining light.
Yeah, I can't see it either. I see it in the smaller races,
But what's really interesting is that they're fearful that Oregon will turn red. Oregon, really? Like,
Yeah,
wow. I mean, Oregon
the
turns
only
red.
thing-
What's next?
What if
You know,
these polls
Texas
are all
turns,
wrong,
turns
though?
blue.
We just don't know.
Right.
right now, as we speak, it is looking like it's going to be a very bad night for Democrats across this country. And
Deservedly.
if you look at North Carolina, the races that we don't talk a lot about, but we're not, and this may be going around the country, but the state Supreme Courts. Now let's look at what's at stake in North Carolina. And I think this is important for just people around the world to understand the way American democracy works, is that the Supreme Court has 2 seats open. The Democrats have held the courts for the last couple of years. If the Republicans win the 2 seats, then they're going to go a Republican majority. What does that mean? Well, if the Republicans in North Carolina win the House and Senate, they're going to retain their majority. They may get a super majority, which means they can override the governor's veto. But then they could go push for abortion being illegal in North Carolina and other things like that. But they can draw maps.
They can push for anything, not just
Yeah,
abortion.
but here's the bottom line, Shaquille. They can draw.
Yeah, but you picked abortion specifically. They could push.
Well,
for
I just
anything
use that as
they
an
wanted.
example. But here's the big point: in North Carolina, they can pick. They can redraw the maps next year when they go into session, and they can pick up a few more Republican seats. So they can take the Jeff Jackson seat in Charlotte area that he's going to go on to become a U.S. congressman. They can district him out of that seat. If Wiley Nickel were to win, they could make him a one-term congressman, and they could take those 2 seats Republican. So, and if the Supreme Court case upholds and they use the independent legislature theory, guess what? There will be no lawsuit. That's it. The state will have to be the final determinant, and then game over, man. I mean, I tell you.
Hey, Steve, I
No,
know
but hang on. Sorry, I've got to jump in here. Sorry,
over.
Steve. You make that sound so like Armageddon-like, right? But if it was the other way around, like it has been in California, where Democrats are in control, it's like, oh, this is such a great thing. Right?
No, it's not a great thing. I'll tell you this.
Like, because Republicans
I
are going
don't
to be
think politicians.
Aliens?
I'll say this. You can
Paxton.
take this to the bank as the moderator of the show, and I'm going to stick to this till I go to the grave. Politicians shouldn't be deciding who votes for them. The voters should be deciding who votes for them. And you're right, Shaquille. Democrats or Republicans should not be drawing districts so that they can win majorities. That is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, think about it. And you're right. You're right, Shaquille. The Democrats are doing it in California, and it's wrong.
I agree with what you've. I agree with what you've
Democrats did it in Maryland.
But the question is, right, in a country like yours, not a country like yours, in your country, where you have the weird and wonderful laws that you have. Some of them I think are fantastic. Other ones I'm a little unsure about how you got there, right? But in your country, what do you propose would be the solution? You can't federalize it, which is the proposed solution, because then whoever's in control of the federal government can make rules to change things to make sure that they're in power.
But
What exactly do you do about it?
Shaquille, there is already some federalizations going on. It's actually one of the issues I was going to bring up and everything. I know you're going to love this one, and we can talk about it on Monday and everything. But a lot of people you've heard me say before about leveling the playing field and things of that nature when it comes to affirmative action. And a lot of people are looking now at the Supreme Court and some of the laws that they are going to pass and how that might change the rules. And actually, it involves 2 cases, including one of our favorite universities. And yes, I'm being sarcastic because a lot of people on both the right and the left have picked on Harvard. So Harvard's one of the cases, and the other one is right here in North Carolina. It's right around the corner from Duke.
In fairness, we have had the state of Harvard on our shows a number of times, so let's be nice to Harvard.
No, we're nice to Harvard, but they are a part of this, because what it is they were saying that using things like race and class and other things are part of the admissions process, and it can help get people in that may not be able to get in otherwise. That's the reason that affirmative action was created. It's also the reason y'all were mentioning universities and how things were created. It's part of the reason that HBCUs were created historically, because you couldn't get into the white universities.
So why not jump around and say, look, there's a whole heap of people that actually dropped out of high school early that also don't get to Ivy League schools. So what we should do, in the interest of diversity, we should get people who aren't educated and clearly aren't able to meet the criteria, because they wouldn't get in, and then allocate a certain amount of spots for those people.
Look at a thing called
you-
EOP. It actually look at EOP and Upward Bound. It is actually not so much around race as it is around economics. So yes, there are programs that target particularly poor people and things of that nature because they don't have the money to get into college, and that's not just. And that's what some of these people are concerned about. I actually went to college on an EOP.
And I call bullshit on that, Mark. I call complete bullshit on that because I have not seen anybody make a push for poor Asian kids to go into these Ivy League universities because according to the popular opinion, they've been successful, so therefore they've got white privilege. Come on,
folks, it's time
you
to
want to pick
close out.
just some ethnicities and not others, and then wonder why.
And there are programs that are specifically geared toward Asian populations and Hispanic populations. It is time to close out again. Bring this up again in a further conversation on tomorrow and everything. By the way, we're not the only election that has got ugly and everything. Because the other thing I was going to mention in the news is apparently the Brazilian campaign has got ugly as well, and they're saying that their race is between a cannibal and a Satanist. So that sounds like a really great place to go into a country and everything and all of that. And that's what they are saying, according to an article in the Washington Post, and all in that space and everything along those lines. So this kind of political nightmares are going on all over the place. Steve, I'm tossing it to you.
No time for closeout. It's going to be a 20-second closeout. I want to thank everyone for being with the show. We'll continue to monitor the elections. My final thought is I always think it's always best for an athlete to go out on top in his prime. And when we watch Tom Brady lose 3 games in a row, the GOAT, and getting sacked more than any quarterback in NFL history this season, it makes me deep down want Brady to make a prodigal comeback. Never count the GOAT out, but my God, he is looking not like the same Tom Brady. Hopefully this will change as the Buccaneers have lost 3 games in a row. The last time Tom Brady lost 3 games in a row was 2002, his second year in the NFL. Maybe his wife was right, and many pundits say that he should have just quit after winning that 6th Super Bowl or 7th Super Bowl or whatever it was. But Tom, I'm rooting for you. I want you to prove us wrong. Come out, get out there and win some games and get to the playoffs. He still can, and get maybe to the Super Bowl. And then, Tom, just retire. That's all I want to say. Back next week for a wonderful show. May the light and love of our hearts always lift us out of the darkness. And we'll begin a new month next week, November, heading in 1 week away to the primary midterm elections in the United States of America. See you all tomorrow, next Monday. Thank you.